The Return of the Indian by Lynn Reed Banks, Chapter 21, Battle of the Skinheads. They moved silently down through the darkness. Omri could feel, though his hands holding the edges of the loose leaf platform, the faint vibrations of life. He could also, for the first time since it happened, feel the sting where the row of minute bullets had pierced the skin of his palm. On the first landing, he nudged Patrick to a stop. Low down on the bottom flight of stairs was one which always creaked. He heard it creak now. He changed direction and slipped through a half-open door into the bathroom. He and Patrick stood behind this door. There was another door to his room which led to his parents' bedroom, and it too was ajar. They saw a faint light, the sort made by a penlight, feeling its way about on the landing, and heard the stealthy sounds of the skinheads following it. Then a faint whisper, "Let's try in here." The finger of light vanished, to appear again through the other door. The intruders were in Omri's parents' room. He could hear them moving furtively about, then the soft whine of a wardrobe opening. No fur coats. Omri and Patrick stood rooted, hardly breathing. Omri was almost praying that, in the darkness, no soldier would press a trigger by mistake. Suddenly the torchlight was within 2 feet of them, on the other side of the door. "Look here, Kev." Omri set his teeth. He knew what they'd found. A little oak chest with small, shallow drawers in which his mother kept the few bits of jewelry she owned. Most of it old silver, inherited from her mother. It was very precious to her, though it wasn't specially valuable. Omri heard the scrape of the wooden drawers, and then, "We can flog this lot. Let's just take the whole thing." Then another voice, farther away but audible because they thought they were safe and they were getting careless. "Here, I'm gonna take a leak on their bed." And there was a burst of stifled sniggering. That did it. Before Omri could even signal, Patrick had let out a growl of disgust and flung the door open. Could you imagine trying to rob someone and then that happens? Oh my goodness, I hope they're terrified. "The light switch beside you!" Omri shouted. There was an agonizing second while Patrick groped. Then the top light came on, flooding the bedroom with brightness. The skinheads froze in grotesque positions, like children playing statues. Their ugly faces were turned toward the boys, their eyes popping, their loose mouths gaping. Omri rushed in like an avenging fury and stopped, the loose-leaf platform with its contingent of men thrust out in front of him. "Here, what?" Then Fickett's sergeant major voice rang shrill and clear. "Fire at will!" The biggest skinhead snarled and made a dive towards Omri. For a split second he loomed menacingly. Then there was a concerted burst of fire, and suddenly tiny red spots appeared on his face in a line, from the bottom of one cheek diagonally across his nose to the top of the other. He stopped dead in his tracks, let out a howl of pain and outrage, and clapped his hands to his face. "I've been stung! It's hornets! Get 'em off of me!" Behind him, his mate started towards Patrick, hands reaching out to grab. "I'll get 'em, the little nerds!" But all he got was the miniature equivalent of an armor-piercing shell up under his thumbnail. "Ow!" he shrieked and let out curses, shaking his hand and dancing in agony. The third and smallest of the gang had been gazing at the object Omri held, and he, unlike the others, had seen. He now let out a sound that started like a moan and ended with a scream. "Owie!" And then he fled in a panic, dashing here and there in short spurts, yelling, "Help! They're alive! I've seen them! They're alive!" Through the crump and crack of the chatter of the guns, which were firing continuously. The other two also turned and tried to flee, but all sense of direction had deserted them. They bumped into furniture, the walls, and each other, swearing and howling and giving great leaps into the air every time they were hit in a sensitive spot. Omri and Patrick added to the uproar by shouting encouragement to their little men. Patrick was jumping about as if at a prize fight or a football match. Omri had to stay still to hold the firing platform steady, but he opened his throat on a long, short shout of excitement as the 3 invaders finally found the other exit and fled through it. Pell-mell. "Cease fire!" cried Patrick. "Cease fire!" bawled Fickets. There was a fraction of a second's silence. Then the boys heard the skinheads shoving and swearing on the stairs. One of them tripped. There was a series of satisfying thumps and then a loud crack as one of the banisters broke. The boys, hurrying down to the half-landing, saw them fleeing along the path and heard the clatter of their boots receding along Hubble Road, accompanied by sounds of anguish. The boys turned and hugged each other. "We did it! We did it! The way you switched that light on? Terrific! How you could hold that thing straight! I'd have tipped them all off, I was so excited. Hey, where is it?" I put it on the bed. They rushed back into the bedroom. Fickets was calmly ordering the men to clear up and cover the big guns. When he noticed the boys, he left the men and edged to the back of the platform. Operation a success, sir? He asked in a quiet tone. Definitely, Fickets. Well done, said Omri. Did I say a sergeant, Fickets? Said Patrick. I meant a captain. Not me, sir. Too much responsibility, he coughed. Better get the men fell in and back to quarters as quick as possible, sir. Yeah, right, said Patrick. Thanks again, Corporal. It was terrific. And he started to carry them upstairs. See that everything's all right up there, said Omri. Okay. Patrick reached the door and stopped. I don't mind so much now missing the other battle, he said. Wasn't this one fantastic? Yeah, said Omri. He was thinking how fantastic it was, too, that he would never be afraid to walk down Hubble Road again. They would leave him severely alone from now on, and even if they didn't, having sent them flying like that after all he'd been through tonight, he couldn't imagine them holding any terrors for him in the future. He looked around the room. He was going to have a bit of explaining to do. The glass on a picture was cracked, and there were a number of pinholes, some larger ones, in the wallpaper and the foot of the bed. Then there was the banister and his own injuries. Well, he could tell his parents about the burglars and say there was a scuffle. Maybe they'd believe it. He hoped so. He bent and picked his mother's jewel box off its face. He saved that for her anyway. Under it was a cheap penlight. He picked it up. It was still lit. He switched it off and dropped it into his pocket. He might, if he felt like it, just hand it back to that little skinhead if he bumped into him after school on Monday. Be a good laugh to see his face. Omri drew a deep breath of satisfaction and went downstairs to bring in the stuff piled up from the front garden. Epilogue by the fire. When everything was back in its place, with Patrick's help, except the banister rail, which needed gluing in 3 places, they made some hot chocolate to take upstairs and some cold potatoes and other leftovers. They were both so keyed up they couldn't feel their tiredness and were prepared to sit up all night. I sent Matron back for some drugs and stuff she wanted, Patrick said, but she made me promise I'd get her again in the morning. She says she's going to take a week's leave from St. Thomas's. She's enjoyed all this anyway. Fickets, too. Little Bear hasn't enjoyed it. Omri didn't answer. Every time he thought of the Indian battle, it took away from his overwhelming pleasure in the one with the skinheads. Where's Boone? He asked suddenly. I sent him back too. He asked me to. Said the odd gunfight and saloon brawl would be a rest cure after all he's been through. He said he'd like to see us soon when things have quieted down. What about his horse? Oh yeah, I gave him the one that English cavalry officer was riding, Patrick chuckled. Boone was really pleased. Said she's a beaut. Really, he was happy with it. And I bet the horse will be happier with him than that snooty redcoat. When they reached the room, all was quiet. The candle had burned out, so Little Bear had to stop his dancing and chanting for the dead. One fire was out, the other was burning low. The Indians, including the wounded, were all asleep, except for Little Bear, who sat cross-legged by the fire. Bright Stars was asleep beside him, the baby in the crook of her arms. Patrick struck a match, and Little Bear looked up. We've brought food, Omri said. No eat, said the Indian. Omri didn't press him. Just poured a toothpaste cap full of hot chocolate and put it beside him with a piece of potato. The match went out. They sat together in the dark with just the embers of the fire. The boys drank their chocolate. For a long time nobody spoke. Then Little Bear said, Why, Omri, bring Little Bear? For the first time in 2 days, Omri thought of his prize, his writing prize. That's in the first chapter, so long ago. It had gone completely from his mind. Now it seemed so trivial that he was ashamed to mention it. Something good happened to me, which was partly to do with you, and I wanted to tell you about it. What good thing happened? I wrote a story about you and Boone, and it was good. Omri write truth of Little Bear? Yeah, it was all true. Omri write Little Bear kill own people? Of course not. You write before this happened. Next time write Little Bear kill own braves. You didn't. The Now Guns killed them. You couldn't know. Then Little Bear fool, came his bitter voice out of the dark. There was a silence. Then Patrick said, No, we're the fools, not you. Yeah, said Omri, we should have known better. We shouldn't have interfered. Interfere? Omri not afraid. We should have let you alone. Let alone Little Bear die from French gun. There was a pause. Then Omri said, You did beat the Algonquins. Yes, beat the Algonquin thief, not beat French. Yeah, that was a pity, said Patrick feelingly. After all that. Fewer dead the better, muttered Omri. Good kill French, Little Bear exclaimed, sounding more like his old self. Kill French next time. But not with Now Guns. After a silence, Little Bear said, Now Guns good. Shoot far. Now Little Bear no shoot far. Next time not put own braves where bullet go. Omri give now guns. Take back. The embers of the fire flared a little. Bright Stars had risen to throw on another curl of wax. Now she crouched beside Little Bear and looked into his face. No, she said clearly. He looked at her. What no? She spoke to him softly and earnestly in her own language. He scowled in the firelight. What did she say, Little Bear? Wife say not use now guns. Soon braves forget skill with bow. Women not want son grow up without Indian skill. She say now gun kill too many, too easy. No honor for chief or son of chief. What do you think? Omri give now guns if Little Bear think good? Omri shook his head. Then, what for I fight with wife? Give wife own way. Peace in Longhouse, till next enemy come. Then maybe wife sorry. He cracks me up. He scowled at her. She smiled. She bent down and picked up the baby and laid it in his arms. He sat looking down at it. What's his name? Omri asked. Name must mean much, mused Little Bear. What Omri mean? Omri was a king in the old days. Omri name for big chief? Omri nodded. Then Little Bear's son name for chief. For father Little Bear had first horse in all tribe. Call him Tall Bear. He sit high on horse, more high than all brave. Suddenly he clutched the baby to his chest and turned his face upward with closed eyes as if bearing a strong pain. When sun grow, Little Bear tell that Omri right story. Little Bear live in story even when gone to ancestors. That give honor. Make son proud of father. He'll be proud of you, Little Bear, without any help from me. Little Bear looked up at him, then he stood up. The fire put out a sudden flare. He stood there, feet apart, his body glowing, his stern face for once untroubled. Omri good, he said loudly. Give Orenda back to Little Bear. Orenda, the life force. And he held his son up in both hands, high as if offering him to the future. So there's Little Bear and Tall Bear. How sweet. That is the end of The Return of the Indian. So go ahead and take the AR test on that, and then we'll start a new novel.